of all, Clarice, thank you again for having me. You always assemble great panels, and it's great to see my friend Akile and Professor Khatri. Let me just first touch on one of the things that Akile said about innovation. One of the things that we see around the world is that freedom leads to innovation, and the countries that have the most freedom allow the most freedom of thought that allows for innovation. You can't think outside the box and come up with new things if you're so tightly boxed in politically, economically, intellectually. And I think that as we look around the world, how do we create more freedom in some of these countries that will allow for innovation, that will allow for creativity? Because if that is suppressed, you're not going to have either the creativity of new goods. The other thing that, as we've seen and talked about in the past, is you have to have rules of order. You have to have legitimacy of how you develop your creativity. And one of the problems that certainly the US and others have had with China in the past has been the fact that you can take a new product, a new innovation to China, and then they will steal your intellectual property. They will steal what you have developed. And the next thing you know, they're offering it at a cheaper price because they didn't have the expense of development of that product and the innovation that went into it, success and failure in developing a new product. So you have to have rules of order. You have to have ways to make sure that you're protecting the creativity of those who develop it, whether it's music. We have issues in the United States all the time where some performer will write a song, perform a song, and the next thing you know, people are performing it and aren't compensating the songwriter. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA. We generate great music, and our songwriters are a strong part of our community. But you have to protect their creativity by making sure that they get the benefits of their hard work rather than somebody simply being able to steal it. And then finally, on the issue of migration, Dr. Chaudhry pointed out that you have to have a control of your border. And I think it's always important to make the distinction between legal migration and illegal migration. You cannot simply have people violate the laws, violate the rules. You don't have any order, it becomes chaos. And then you get the resentment that we're seeing in the UK, in all the other Western countries, where the AFD in Germany, where in the UK others are rising in political power because of the resentment of those that come illegally and then get benefits in many cases greater than the legal, legitimate citizens. So I think it's important to make sure we draw that distinction between legal migration and illegal migration constantly whenever we have these discussions. Clarice, if I break into your house to steal your stuff, to hold your family hostage so I can take your stuff, that's different than if you invite me to dinner and I'm there as a guest, I'm there as a welcomed participant in the evening. And I think we have to keep drawing that distinction. By the same token, we have to make sure that we don't allow the resentment towards those who illegally migrate to create a rift in places like England or in the US or anywhere else, where how you look defines how we treat you. I mean, there are third, fourth generation Indians and African Americans and others who are in England, and they should not be treated in a racist way simply because a lot of those who are coming in illegally, quote, look like them. Looks should not determine how we treat people. Books should. The regulations and the laws. And I think that what London and England and other countries have lost is the ability to distinguish between legal and illegal migration. And that's making the whole debate much more difficult. We certainly have situations where there are refugees who have to flee their home, whether it's because of earthquakes or flooding or warfare. And the question, I think one of the things that we have to confront in the Middle East is when we have people in Gaza who are being encouraged to leave because of the rubble that has become where Gaza is, the buildings that have been destroyed, and people are still hovering and in that rubble living because they refuse to leave because they don't trust that they will be able to come back. You can't tear down a building and build a new one as long as people are still living in the rubble. So you have to move them, but is there an assurance that they will believe that they can come back? I think that's the biggest barrier to peace in the Middle East, certainly between Israel and Gaza. These people don't trust that they're going to be able to come back, and that instead of their apartment buildings being built anew, that they will be built and then others will move into their neighborhood. And I think that trust is still the biggest barrier to finding a resolution there. But yeah, if somebody is forced out of their home, their homeland, because of the ravages, again, of natural disasters or warfare, that's different than people pursuing an economic advantage by breaking the rules to go into someone else's country when there are processes and means to do so. And let's not overlook that in many cases, countries are encouraging their people to leave and illegally migrate because it's like a safety valve that releases the pressure. Many of the hardest working, smartest, best people are leaving their countries and migrating to others where there is more opportunity because they are the best and the brightest. And they're bringing their talents to other countries where if they stayed where they were and were given the opportunity to follow the blueprint of success that other countries provide, that would put more pressure on governments to allow for those rules. For example, the areas of northern Mexico are no different than Arizona, Southern California, Texas, and New Mexico. They have oil resources. They have the same kind of geography. The only distinction is a border where north of the border, you have enforcement of laws, you have a tradition of law, and south of the border, corruption has taken such a strong hold of Mexico. If Mexico would simply follow the blueprint and get the cartels, get the violent thugs who run Mexico illegally, if they could enforce the laws, they should have the same kind of prosperity with the same hardworking people, ethical people, moral people that make up the Southwest of the U.S. There's no distinction other than what blueprint do you follow in terms of how you run your country. And by allowing people who would be best to build a Mexico that would reflect the same kind of prosperity and freedom that the U.S. enjoys, by letting them leave or by encouraging them to leave, you hurt your own ability to develop in the same way. You're not seeing massive numbers of African Americans immigrating or Africans immigrating to the U.S. It is mainly from South and Central America. You're seeing huge numbers from China who were never enslaved by anybody in the United States. And I can assure Achille that different perspectives are being shared in my classroom at Belmont University, and I look forward to him joining us. Just last week, our friend Julia Berg was a guest, and she shared from Africa a lot of the perspectives that were new to what my students were hearing, particularly because I do agree with you that so much of what has hampered African development, and it's a continent, but it's also a multiple number of countries that have different culture, different background, different challenges. But she pointed out that West Africa, most of the colonizers built train tracks to move resources from the mines to the port. Whereas East Africa, you had more infrastructure development where the train tracks, traversed the whole country, creating an infrastructure for development that West Africa was denied. So I am making sure that we're having different perspectives shared about the historical background. But I got to tell you, Achille, I trust what the South and Central and Mexican illegal immigrants are saying when they come to the U.S., when they say they are coming for jobs and they are taking jobs away from honest, decent, hardworking, legal citizens and legal migrants. So I believe them when they say they're coming to the U.S. because they're seeking jobs. They're seeking to get the resources. And in too many instances, we're paying somebody who comes here illegally more than we're paying for the benefits of those who are legally in our country. But I look forward to you coming to the class and sharing your perspective on those and other issues. First of all, anybody that hears Achille talk is not surprised that he took his back to the top of the level. Unfortunately, Achille, you are not typical of the millions of illegals who have come into the country, many of whom are illiterate not only in English, but also in Spanish. They're not destined to become bank managers, and I think they're not going to bring the same kind of success story that you brought to bear. Now, I will agree with Achille that I too will look forward to the French whining and complaining when they have to move to Kenya and their cheese is melting and their wine is hot and they're having to complain about being the others in another country. And you mentioned the decline of the French economy right now, and Dr. Chaudhry mentioned Germany as well. I mean, they are losing their industrialization in part because they are creating this fear factor of Russia to justify holding together against the evil Russians who are going to take Berlin and Paris and London if they're not stopped before they get to Kiev, even though on the other hand, they're arguing that they can't conquer East Ukraine. So which is it? Are they that powerful or are they that weak? Which is it? So it's to create a fear that keeps Europe bound together as their economies are collapsing. And by spending 2 or 3 or 4 times the amount for gas or oil, they're destroying their economies. And as Achille pointed out, BRICS is on the rise. And the West has ignored that. The West has poo-pooed that, I think, to our own detriment. And if the West does not wake up soon, you're going to see more of the de-dollarization that already has some of the countries in Africa trading in the yuan, trading in other currencies that will put more, certainly more at risk. Now, to Clarice, to your question, I think that one of the things that we have to recognize is that as Dr. Chaudhry mentioned, nationalization is not always a bad thing, depending on how you are imposing it. I have absolutely no problem with somebody leading Kenya or Uganda or Congo or Rwanda to make Kenya great again, to make Rwanda great again. That's what leaders should be doing. The question is there a zero-sum game where we only advance at your loss? And I think that there has to be some recognition that we can all advance without hurting someone else. And I think nobody in the West should decry countries in Africa in particular taking advantage of the resources that have been raped and robbed for centuries and diverted. And if those resources are used to make Congo great again, to make Uganda great again, and that leads to a democratization, that leads to more freedom, that leads to more wealth and prosperity, I'm 100% in favor of that. And I've expressed that to my class, Achille.
Thank you. I love it. When you say that, this is what I want to hear. Give the background perspective. It helps to understand what is going on. Thank you.
And I think my class hates the French as much as I do now.
No, don't use
let me just interject because I'm going to have to leave in just a moment. But you are exactly right. And I think panels like this, conversations like this, with my friend Achille, with my friend Professor Chaudhry, people get along pretty well. We may have disagreements. Achille and I may disagree on the details. Professor Chaudhry and I may disagree on a few things. But conversation leads to resolution and cooperation. And governments don't get along very well. They're not suited to get along. People all over the world get along pretty well when they get to know each other, when they actually talk and listen. And I think, again, I appreciate what Globus does with panels like this and Clarice bringing people together with sometimes different viewpoints. But as we talk, we find we also share commonality of views and how to get to the same solution, and even if we disagree on the pathway. Achille may think, oh, we want to drive down this interstate to get there. I want to drive down this one because I think there's going to be less traffic. But we often have the same goal of where we're going, and we shouldn't have these conflicts simply because of the pathway to get there. And I think that, again, I appreciate you and what Globus does, Pan Africa Media does in bringing disparate views. I try to do it, Achille, in my classroom as well, because I want my students to learn to think, not like me, but to learn to think. And I think that we're hopefully accomplishing that. But again, I think having conversations, people do fine if we get together over a meal in many cases. That works out. Governments really stink at it. And that's why we've got to get past governments to get to people. And again, I'm going to have to dash, but I appreciate you, my friends. And Achille, I'll have you in class soon via Zoom or otherwise. And Dr. Chaudhry, I want you to join us and give us some perspective of India as well. I'm teaching, by the way, international business at Belmont University and have 18 students who are having so much fun, in part, Achille, because they're hearing from voices all over the world, whereas Julia Berg, Angie Wong, who worked in China, Inda Brady, who works in Turkey. They're getting to hear voices in a classroom in the U.S. that they are never given access to, and they're all shocked and amazed that, any crazy professor like me would do that. And I appreciate you guys. And Clarice, thank you again for bringing me in. I'm going to have to dash, but I will talk to you guys soon.